everyone. Today I am behind the wheel of an E46 M3, my nemesis. Now, I used to own an E46 M3, had one for about a year. It's only appeared in I think 2 videos that I have because it got sold some time ago. If you want to see more of it, go and look at my E46 M3 versus Audi RS4 video. That was my car. It was a beautiful looking car. I still look at pictures of it and go, oh, that was a stunning car. It was Laguna Seca blue with the black, not the blue leather interior. Had all the goodies. It had CSL wheels, genuine CSL boot lid. It had been fettled with a little bit, had a slightly fridgier exhaust. It was, in short, my perfect BMW. Unfortunately, it was also a living hell to own. I had to do the head gasket twice, and I had to do it twice because it got misdiagnosed and I had to have the entire engine rebuilt. In fact, I still have the head gasket on my wall in a picture frame because it cost me so much money. I thought, well, it must be a piece of art. I had the car for about 13 months, and in that period it cost me between £4,000 to £5,000 just in trying to keep it working, and I think I only saw it for about 5 of those 13 months. So that really was the car that made me fall out of love with BMWs. Now, I've since rediscovered a couple of BMs that I really like, M2 in particular, and even the 135i, the 140 and the 240. They are really great cars. But the E46 M3 has continued to haunt me. I've done a couple of videos like on the M2 where I've tried to suggest to people that maybe they should consider moving on from this admittedly iconic car. I've got a number of reasons for that. First off, they're getting old. Most of them have had at least one owner who hasn't given 2 shits about them and has consequently beaten the living daylights out of them and really not cared about servicing. And when you do that to a performance car that's very highly strung like this, well, someone's going to wind up paying for that later down the line. In my case, it was me. And that, by the way, was after I'd spent a long time picking a car very carefully that had all the common faults sorted. Vanos was good as gold. The subframe had been properly repaired by a third-party company, not BMW. So everything was absolutely rosy, so I thought. But you can easily spend a hell of a lot of money on these, whether they're working or whether they're not. And I thought that perhaps I'd given the E46 M3 maybe a bit of a hard time, because I'll be perfectly honest and say that, you know, when you have a car that gives you so much grief as my car did, you probably develop an unfavourable opinion of the car that it maybe doesn't deserve. Then, last year, a very kind gentleman called Jack let me have a go in his E46 M3 Coupe. He'd set it up as a mild track day car, so it had a little bit of the interior stripped, bucket seats, few gentle performance mods, and we drove that car down these very roads. And just as we were about to do the drive-bys, it started running like dog do. It turned out to be very minor. It was just a couple of coil packs. But that really put me off, and unfortunately I never released that video. And Jack, if you're watching, I'm very sorry for that. Thank you extremely for your time, but basically I got on with Jack so well, we wound up just having a chat about cars rather than me actually reviewing the thing. So when Jason, a viewer of the channel, got in touch and offered me a go of his E46 M3 Convertible, which is in nearly my hideous nightmare spec, i.e. it's silver, convertible, but it's not SMG, it's manual, so that kind of saves it. So it's 2 out of 3 the car I would never buy. But he said, would I like a go of what is, and certainly appears to be, a very nice example? I said, yep, go on then, let's see if I can break the curse. So I came and met him on Tuesday, got in the car, turned it on, and this happened. It lets me sync up all the cameras. So when I edit it like a TV program.
All right.
I do it enough.
Yeah, one. Do it right.
That sounds sick as a dog. Now, that obviously, I basically fell about laughing at the time, because if I didn't laugh, I would certainly be crying. And I began to believe that I was actually genuinely cursed by E46 M3s. And it turned out that again was a minor problem relating to the Vanos unit, which had just been repaired. That's since been fixed. So this had a full overhaul, had a new Vanos or reconditioned Vanos unit installed by Mr. Vanos, who did an excellent job and rectified the problem extremely quickly and efficiently, and the car is now running very, very well. Now, I must confess that I did a little bit of research on these cars. I mean, I know a reasonable amount about them anyway, having owned one. And the one thing that surprised me is the weight figure. So these cars weigh, in the real world, just under 1,700 kilos. That's a lot. Now, Jason, the car's owner, told me that the engine was pulling very strong and working very well, and I must confess that I didn't quite believe him, but he was right. It is working very, very well. I find these S54 units vary greatly. You have to remember that even a spring chicken of an M3 these days is 13 years old, realistically probably built about 14 years ago. They're old cars. In not too long a time, some of them are going to be 20 years old. They're nearly classics, and you really have to treat them as such. Now, one thing I didn't really love about my car was the gearbox, but having driven now a couple of other M3s, I believe it may be more the case that the gearbox in my own car simply wasn't great. This is not a brilliant gearbox by any means, but it works well enough. The car's warmed up, warmed through, and it shifts nicely. I've got no complaints. Now, you may or may not have noticed that I am not driving the car in sport mode. I hate sport mode in these. It only does one thing. It basically makes the throttle very, very sharp. It takes it from being a throttle pedal and turns it into being a throttle switch. I'm not a big fan of that. I mean, I shall demonstrate for those of you who aren't aware. So I've got the car at 40 miles an hour, which is the speed limit. I'm gently resting on the throttle. If I press the sport button, you see the car pick up and then down and up and down. That's all it does. And one of the great things about this car is the throttle response. It's absolutely perfect. So I think that by turning the sport button on, you're pretty much just ruining the car. Now, this car has got the hardtop on because Jason prefers coupes and his wife prefers convertibles. So this is the current compromise. When he drives it, the hardtop's on. When she drives it, the top then comes off. I know he has owned a coupe in the past, and he was very honest. I mean, we all know that prices of these are going up. The days of being able to buy a semi-decent E46 M3 for £8,000 are long gone, and I suspect they will never ever return because, like many cars of this type, they're getting crashed, raced, wrecked. All sorts of things are happening to them. So basically, good examples and examples with lower miles are becoming fewer and further between, basically. Now, this car's got just over 82,000 miles, and it does feel pretty good. In terms of modifications, it has pretty much none. The only exception being some H&R springs and sway bar links or something along those lines. We weren't quite sure. But Jason wanted my opinion on this because he felt that perhaps the car was a little bit too stiff, whereas other people have told me it was okay. Actually, I think it's not too bad. I was expecting it to be horrendously stiff, but actually it's perfectly fine. It's difficult when you've got a car this weight to try and keep everything controlled. So you'll notice if you drive something like a Caterham that you'd think it'd be super stiff because it's all sporty and everything, but actually they're not. They ride very comfortably. Conversely, when you then drive something like a Nissan GTR, because it's such a mass, to try and contain it, it takes very stiff suspension. If it didn't have that, well, it would just wobble all over the place and crash off the road. So actually, I don't think the suspension's too bad. The only downside, the car rides very low, which I know people love the look of, but it does make it a bit tricky to get it over speed humps. Now, really, the other things that I don't like about E46 M3s are the fact that they seem to be very, very adept at extracting money from you, one way or another. Basically, if the car's working absolutely perfectly fine, you'll feel this odd and strange burning desire to start upgrading it. And upgrading these things is both very easy and very expensive. I see people spending obscene amounts of money in these cars if you take a moment to consider what the car itself is actually worth. For example, I've seen people that have spent £10,000 on the car, and one of the first things they go and buy is a carbon fibre airbox, because they want that CSL style airbox and that CSL intake sound. Well, that's £4,000. So you're going to just spend 40% of your car's value on an upgrade, which nets you about 15 horsepower. Now, if you want to take these on track, they are the darling of the track day scene. And really, let's face it, between this and the MX-5, you have the answer to basically any question ever asked on piston heads. Oh, what do you want? Oh, sports car? Okay. How many seats do you need? 2 or 4? 2? Not got much money? MX-5. Ah, need more seats? Okay. Do you want a Porsche? No. Get an E46 M3. Done. That's basically how the internet works. That's kind of okay, and you know, maybe it wasn't so bad when you could still buy these with some sort of warranty on them, but those days are gone now. That, you know, 5-6 years ago, you could find the odd one that still had a bit of warranty left on it, but now you're relying entirely on aftermarket third-party warranties, and most of those won't even cover the cars because they are just too old. If you want to take them on track, first thing you want to do is strip them out because they are very light. I mean, they're not as heavy as, say, the equivalent Audi, and they are definitely better on track than an Audi or a Mercedes of the time, but still, 1,500 plus kilos of car takes some stopping. So you have to strip them out, which then makes them not very pleasant to drive on the road. Then you upgrade all the suspension, then you realise that the brakes are absolutely not up to track driving. People complain about them for road driving, but genuinely, I've never really had a problem. That being said, my own car, which will be the E46 M3 that I've driven fastest, had massive K-Sport 8-pot calipers on the front. And they won't have been on there by accident. Now that car has now gone off to Germany, and the gentleman there, hi Michael if you're watching, has had a lovely time driving the car, and I think it's even been trouble-free as well. Of which, of course, I'm not at all bitter. But, you know, I'm glad that he's enjoying the car, and I think it may even be going back to Australia, so that, you know, makes me feel very, very good. If you can spend, I've seen Eva magazine, there's one of their writers has got one of these and is turning into a track car, and he spent, yeah, £4,000 or £5,000 on brakes. It'd be like me saying, you know what, I want to change something on the Lotus, I'm going to spend 30 grand on it. Why? To be honest, if you want a track day car, if you want to turn one of these into a track day car, the amount of money you're going to spend, if you were honest with yourself, if you took a bog standard E46 M3 and you looked at what was necessary to make it a good track car, you've probably spent nearly the same amount of money that would buy you a Lotus Elise. This is always tricky. Overtaking a horse box. For one has to do it gently and quietly without scaring the poor horse in the back. So for those watching that ride horses, I do care, honestly. I just eat them. I don't scare them. This car's squeaking quite a bit. That's going to be unique to the fact that it's convertible. Obviously you lose a fair bit of boot space. I wish I could put the roof down, but the hardtop is on it. Yeah, it's that little bump back there. That was a little bit firm, but this is far from a perfect or immaculate road, so there's not really any big issues with this car in terms of the handling. Actually turns quite nicely. I don't think there's these cars that have great steering. And when I had one, I used to say that, yeah, the steering was brilliant. But the fact of the matter is that since then, I've gone on to drive a large number of cars which have much, much better steering. Is the steering terrible? No, it isn't. Is it brilliant? No, it isn't. You know, in the grand scheme of things, it is a 6 out of 10, which is fine, because most cars that you buy now will be like a 2 or a 3. So it's better than, say, the M4, but it's just not as good as other stuff. That's fine. The truth is, I don't hate these cars. I think they hate me, and I'm just waiting for some sort of albatross to fall on the bonnet of this one, because at the moment, that seems to be the level of luck that I'm having when it comes to E46 M3s. But if you're out there and you want to buy a sporty performance car which has got 4 seats, I mean, they are a very, very good car. The one thing I really say to people, and I think maybe, if I'm being completely honest, the reason that I probably don't like them that much is that they have become the default answer. And I don't like it when there's not a choice. I like it when people go for different things. I like variety. It's one of the reasons that I have a Lotus. You know, I love that. And so when I just see basically everyone going, oh, well, the only choice you must have will be an E46 M3, it's just, I just get disappointed. I like my cars to be maybe a little bit more adventurous, a little bit more exciting. But that being said, this car does have a lot going for it. Most of it's up there. She moves quick enough. It does stop if you need it to. Seat's not very solid, so I can see why people put different ones in. Yeah, you've got to work it to get it to move, but that's the joy of it. I think gearing in these is perfect. That I'll say. Gearbox, gearing, brilliant. And it does have a very good dual personality. That it is a lovely car that if you want to go up and smash a track day out, but you've got to pick up the in-laws on the way back, it's a brilliant car that will do both. They'll never know they're sat in something which will do 155 on the limiter, and will go a lot faster if the limiter falls off. But yeah, I'm glad to have driven one without anything bad happening this time round. Will I ever have an E46 M3 again? No, not a chance. There's nothing against the car, that's me. Oddly though, would I have a Z4M again? A car which I will confess is much worse. I probably would. Someone pointed out the exact reason why to me the other day in one of my comments. I'm sorry, I can't remember your name if you're watching the video. They said the best thing to have with a Z4M is a second car. And they're right. When I had mine, I didn't. If I'd had another car to drive around in, I probably would have got on perfectly well with it. So really, would I have another E46 M3? No. What I'd have is an E46 330, because I love my 330, Hub Sport, Estrel Blue, beautiful car. And I'd have a Z4M. I'd have a Roadster this time round, because I want the wind in my hair. I love the coupe. I think it's one of the best looking cars BMW have made in the last 2 decades. In some ways, criminally underrated. In others, criminally overrated. But that's life. So thank you for watching. Thanks very much to Jason for bringing his car down. And I hope that maybe explains a little bit more about my incredibly complex relationship with one of Munich's most famous sons. Thanks for watching. Please comment, like, or dislike if you think I'm wrong, because you probably do. And see you all for the next one. Bye-bye.